Okay, the October 26, 2022 Oregon State Marine Board quarterly meeting is hereby called to order at the Klamath County Commissioner's Office in Klamath Falls, Oregon. I'd like to take a couple minutes to thank our staff for some great events that have gone on between our last board meeting and this one. First off, the staff board meeting day, where members of the board got to meet all the individuals in the different work groups, find out a lot more about what they did. Celebrated some retirements of some key staff people, and then went on a tour of some facilities down by Independence. I'd also like to thank the staff that had a very ambitious road tour agenda for our public outreach meetings, and I'm looking forward to hearing the summaries of what came out of those. And finally, thank you, Janine, and your cohorts at ODF&W and BLM for a very interesting tour related to the Klamath Dam removal, restoration, and impacts to and creation of new recreational facilities for boating. So thank you. Our first item is approval of minutes for the July 28th meeting. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the July meeting as written.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting. All those or the meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next item is our request for public comment. We did send out an announcement electronically inviting folks to testify via video chat. We received none. We have no one in the audience today who has asked to testify. So moving on, agenda item A, the director's report.
Chair Jackson, member of the committees, Larry Warren, Director of the Oregon State Marine Board. Just wanted to cover a few things that have happened since the director's report, then take questions. First off, I would say congratulations, Chair Jackson. This is your first meeting as Chair Jackson, and every time I forget that, I'll put $1 in a jar. So just bear with me as I make sure I make that adjustment. I would like to echo the thanks for the community meetings. Staff have spent an inordinate amount of time away from their families and on the road and their dogs and all the things that they like to do. I don't know how many miles, but it's got to be pushing close to 2,000 at this point, almost, I think. So we've hit everywhere from Newport to Baker City to Coos Bay to Medford, and it's just always nice to get out and learn what's on folks' minds. And it really, I think for me, the highlight, and we'll do a better wrap up in the next board book. You just can't get a feel from Salem for what things are happening out in the field till you go there. And you find that most people, if you talk to them and listen to them and hear what's on their mind, you end up in a better place. So would echo that. Thanks for the staff commitment to doing that. And then just wanted to mention for the board, you know, I think there's always been talk in the broader world about staffing shifts, leaving, and just kind of retention and those things. And Marine Board hasn't been immune from that. We've had pretty significant staff turnover in the last couple of years. But I just am encouraged every time the managers run a hiring process and hire somebody, we just seem to be getting really great people. So we've just got really good team, good people coming in, good people training them that have been there for a while. And it's just, you know, it's a little hard. I think with some folks would probably like a few less turnovers so they could get back to their regular work, but it's making our agency better. And then one that really haven't brought up in any of the past year or so is just want to give special thanks for our registration team. We don't talk about it enough. They really got buried. You know, if you heard everyone went out and bought a boat during COVID, they did. And it just, you know, really put a stressor on our registration team with the volume coming in. And they just work, their energy's great. They've kept up on the renewals. They're powering through some of the new boat titles that are lagging a little more than we would like, but just really impressed with the work that our registration team has been doing over the last year and a half on some of that backlog work. So that I'd be happy to take any questions.
Anyone from the board have questions or comments for Director Warren?
Just a couple of comments. So I'd like to echo what Chair Jackson said about the thank you to Jennifer, first of all, for putting together that staff day. It was really informative. And even as someone who's been around for a few years, it was very enlightening. It was great to meet all the new staff and see the enthusiasm within the agency right now. I would also like to thank Eddie and his crew for putting together such a great year for law enforcement and training, and just say how much I'm looking forward to hearing how the next year goes. And along those lines, some of you may know, but Walter Sherbarth, who is down here in my area in Curry County, is retiring on Friday. So I'm going to present him with a coin on behalf of the Oregon State Marine Board for all of his dedication to all of those training efforts. Hopefully he will still continue to be involved a bit. And then I just would like to also echo what Chair Jackson said and thank the staff for their arduous agenda in meeting voters within the state. So that's really all I have. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Janine for the update on projects. The pictures are really very helpful to me. It's very nice to see what's being accomplished out there. So thank you, Janine, for doing that. So I have.
And I would also like to thank Dorothy and the folks that put together that wonderful appendix in the board book about ADV, and looking forward to seeing the progress made on that issue in the upcoming year or two. No other comments? We will move on to our next item, which is an overview of the Columbia River Yacht Association with Doug Ramji.
So Doug probably gets that a lot. We all just muffle his last name, but I'll set it up for you, Doug, and then take it away. Columbia River Yachting Association is one of the longest partners the agency's had. They've been there for the agency over the years, and just a nice contingent of boaters up in the Portland area that are really just almost the closest to a boating purist as we might have. They're just really dedicated to what they do up there. They have great programs, and they reached out earlier this year and said, hey, we'd like to make sure we just keep that partnership going and strengthen it up where we can. And so I thought, well, what better way than to just have Doug come and talk about the association and tell us what they do. I know we've got some members that might not be aware of them as an organization, and just interested in hearing where they're going. So Doug, the floor is yours. And maybe if you get stumped, I know Colleen has lots of that yachting club experience as well. So member Moran could always hop in if there's a stump question for you. So.
No, I appreciate that, Larry, and the chance to speak to everyone here. So thanks for inviting me to talk. I'll see if I can get myself to share here. Not sure what share, didn't share.
Well, you had it up there for a second, Doug, and then it went away.
Okay.
There it is. We can see it.
Okay, good. So I'll give a little bit about me just so everybody knows. My name's Doug Ramju. I've been an active boater in the community for a very long time. I've been a Christmas shipper up in the Portland area as a leader and a participant for over 30 years. I'm an avid offshore boater, cruiser on the Columbia, but my wife and I also enjoy going up into the Canadian waters. So we're definitely boaters, and that's what gets me into Columbia River Yachting Association. I believe that it's an organization that is best suited to the interests of boaters. It was founded in 1933. Back then it was to encourage racing or sailboat racing basically on the Columbia River, and things have changed just a little bit since then. We still have sailboaters, but there's also a heavy power contingent too. We represent over 2,000 boaters, and it's made up of an organization of the larger yacht clubs in the area, such as Portland Yacht Club, Columbia River Yacht Club, Tyee, but also cruising clubs that don't actually have a physical boat or clubhouse, but still get together on a regular basis. It allows us as a group to get together as a unified voice. We have meetings every month. We do our best to come up with what are the issues going on right now. And from there, we just do our best to make sure that we make entities such as the Marine Board know what we're doing. So. We do have a mission statement. You can all read it there if you'd like to. But basically, it's promote recreational boating and boating safety. We do our best to work with as many agencies as possible. And I'll put up a couple of those here in a minute and just give you a little bit of a feel for who we work with. But it's mainly encourage, promote boating activities on the Columbia, but also the facilities. It's important to us that we try to maintain, upgrade, increase the amount of options that we have available. So here's our officers. Some of them may look like familiar names. Mike Condrat is in the National Nautical Safety Foundation. Myself, I'm also a WOO secretary this year, so I may have seen a few of you on that particular meeting set. But we're basically officers and standing committee, and then our board of directors is all of these member clubs. When there's something that we're going to vote on that we think is important, in our meetings, it's the delegates that also vote. All right, so here's a small list. It's definitely not all of them. Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, a River Patrol group. I'm proud to say that a lot of our best, Sergeant Steve Dangler is absolutely a prize in that group. We work with the Power Squadron, or What is America's Boating Club. They provide a lot of courses online, so we try to get that information out to the members. Coast Guard, when it's important, if there's things that we need to know or say to our group, then we try to be that person. Department of State Lands for some of the derelict vessels and some of the camping things, but also WOO, the Waterfront Organizations of Oregon. I joined that group as a secretary. I'll probably be a board member next year, but the two groups are very synergistic. Ron Schmidt, who's the president of that group, and I kind of look at it as, well, when it gets to the water, it's me. When it gets above the water, it's him. Partly because that group is a lot of hooked to the shore homes, and so we kind of think of that as land, but he and I work together all the time. So what do we do to help the community? We used to have a list of 5 things, but as times change, years. But what we do on a regular basis is we publish an annual cruise guide. If all of these clubs, there's 15 or 20 organizations that could be cruising on any given weekend. It's nice to have a little piece of paper, which is also online now, that says, hey, who's going to be at that dock this weekend? Then you can decide personally if you want to just, show up or try to make it happen, or just find one that nobody's at to join with a couple of friends. So it's been around a long time as well. We create a monthly newsletter. Sometimes it's links to your newsletter. I try to include those whenever I see something, but also about just things happening in the boating world. The Saccharissa and the Alert were some big news for quite a while, and I'm just so glad those two things are gone. I cross the I-5 bridge just about every day, and to see that not a mess today is beautiful. So there's a lot of people that made that happen, but thanks. The other thing we do, and this is where Larry and I met in person, is we have an opening day boat parade. It's the first Saturday in May every year. And basically it's where all the clubs get together. We have a theme. Thank God we don't have to create that theme. We follow whatever the Rose Festival does. So that makes it a little bit easier for us to pick that each year. But we coordinate it. We're oversight for it. We do our best so that all the clubs can compete, and I'll use that term loosely, for awards for that day. But we're always trying to make that better. But it is a fun thing to do. If you've ever been to one, or if you haven't been to one, please let us know. We'd be happy to get you on one of the boats that are out there. We also coordinate the best we can with the Oregon State Marine Board, and thank you again for having me on today. But law enforcement, other state agencies on issues that are directly related to boating. That's what we do. That's who we want to be. Yeah, there could be a couple other little things in there, but it's about boating. We have boater safety and training classes. Life jacket awareness is also another big part of our group. We donate to the Nautical Safety Foundation every year, just as a lot of people do. So what have we done recently? There was a set of docks down in Martin Slough, just above Klamath, that the Columbia River Yacht Club owned, and they were kind of getting in disrepair, and there was never any idea of who could or couldn't go there. And so we came up with a deal with Columbia River Yacht Club where CRYA bought the docks. We cleaned them back up, resecured them because they had kind of come loose from the weather. So more anchors, more chains. And then the addition of a pet dock in the area. The owner of the Martin Slough Island, Martin Island, he doesn't like boaters coming ashore with their pets. And so we thought that would be a really good way to keep the people off the island, yet still give them a place to take their pets. We donated, I would hate to say help fund because the amount was so small. We donated towards the project for the new docks at Westport, Oregon. I got to be down there for the opening of that, and those are incredible. That was one project that was just amazing to me. I had never seen a launch for paddle craft like that in my life. I mean, it was just a beautiful thing, and I'm glad we could be a part of it. We have a local park up here, the J.J. Collins Marine Park, formerly known as Coon Island to a lot of the people that cruise in the area. And we noticed that all of the tables and all of the benches, even though the structure of them was in good shape, all the wood was bad. So we went in, made a project, bought the materials, replaced all of that, got it stained, and also cleaned the docks that day too, pressure washed all the docks that were down there. So again, we try to have projects that we work with, and we're always looking for new projects. So if somebody has something in mind, please let us know. We updated our website, www.crya.us. Luckily or unluckily, I'm still a big part of that. So I do my best to make sure that we keep it up to date. And that's not easy. We're changing a lot right now. It's one of those things where we do our best to always put the information up there, but get bad information off of there too. All right, what are the goals for 2023? Well, because of COVID, we typically run a vice president that are volunteers for 2 years. You come in as vice president, the next year you're president representing your club. That gives you some priority to be in the lead for opening day, but also a chance to push or not push, to bring forward goals that your club or that you would like to see. I was a president back in 2014, and one of my goals was to try to help clean up River Place. That was a very difficult task, but it got better at the time, and we still struggle with that one. Because of COVID, I jumped back in as the president, trying to keep it going, and I'm happy to say that next year I have a replacement as the vice president, and I'm sure I'll keep a officer job. I just don't know what that'll be yet. We'll all have to work on that. We're trying to update our opening day event a little bit. Again, it's mired in history, which sometimes gets a little old. But our goal is participation is number one, and we've got a survey out right now to all of our members. You know, what would you like to see? The other thing we try to do is continue the promotion and creation of club and community events. Some of our clubs will have an event that's meant for all clubs and all members to be able to come, but they don't know how to get the word out. So those things go in our monthly newsletter, and we do our best to, again, make it as easy for them as possible to be able to get that word out. We also wanted to create a new funding mechanism. We had a golf tournament that was our annual golf tournament for a lot of years, and yes, there's nothing about golf that says boating, and that's what that's what got us to say let's come up with a new idea. And so we've been looking at some ideas. A marine services directory page is what we're working on right now, where we'll have a list up on our website and hopefully get our sponsors to help us out with that. And last slide here, I thought I'd show you a picture of one of the events this year. Spook Cruise has been something around for a long time. Sand Island docks are right across from the St. Helens area. And this was a picture taken this year from Jolene Coates Walsh. I don't know if you know her from Freshwater News, but lucky for her, that's the view from her home. But you can see all the people down there. This is a club-wide event where people, even not in boating clubs, come down and just enjoy a nice time. And that's the goal, is, you know, get people together. It's not you, me, it's us. It's all of us trying to get together. So hopefully that gives everybody a clue as to what we do. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Doug. Anybody from the board want to make a comment or a question? Hearing that, thank you. It's very educational. Val.
Just was going to say thank you. It's pretty incredible to see that and see everything that you do on the Columbia River. So being from the Southern Oregon coast, we don't have events that large. So.
And I would just add that the opening day, if you've never been to one of those, it's pretty incredible. It can be a little intimidating if you don't own white pants and a blue blazer, which I don't. But every time you walk in there, the group is very welcoming. The energy is amazing. You know, that last picture you showed with all the boats there, it always reminds me when I've gone to the opening day events that just, this is a large community of people that are passionate about boating, and they show up to help when they have projects that they're interested in. So it's a partnership that I hope we keep building and fostering as we go along. And it's also where I met member Moran for the first time, was in some of those. So
Great, thank you.
oh, Colleen came up mute there.
Colleen?
Oh, I was just going to thank Doug for the great presentation, reassure Director Warren that most of the time our rain gear is over our pants and blazers, at least if you're on a sailboat. We don't have the luxury of covered cabins to do opening day from. But I think the one big takeaway about Columbia River Yachting Association is just that they are a wonderful umbrella group to help unite many different clubs. And when you think about the sheer number of recreational, I'll call them motor boaters, encompassing sailboats in that as well, in the Columbia River, particularly in the Portland metro and out in the suburban areas. It's a lot of people, and the CRYA board and the leaders there do a great job of making sure that everyone is able to use the same spots we all love on the river without overcrowding or without running into each other, having too much conflict. So great job, Doug, and board.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much for coming, Doug, and look forward to talking with you in the future. All right, our next item, the Racial Justice Council update. Brian.
As Brian comes up, I'll just set up that the Racial Justice Council was codified in statute as a way to make sure that state agencies were thinking about the racial justice work, and particularly as we do some of our budget work. And our agency volunteered to be one of the first front runners, and I was comfortable doing that because I knew that we had already a lot of great work going on in the organization. A lot of that happening in Brian and Janine's areas. So I'm going to pull up Brian's slide deck, and then Jennifer's going to tell me how to share that. Okay.
Chair Jackson, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. For the record, I'm Brian Paulson, Building Safety Program Manager. Today I get to talk to you about really an exciting program, just a lot of things that we've been doing over the last 6 months with the Racial Justice Council and Environmental Equity Committee. And as Larry said, the Racial Justice Council was a product of House Bill 2167 from the 2021 legislative session. It requires each agency request budget to include a racial equity impact statement, which was provided in the board book. That is something that our agency put together this summer. This also was in consultation with the Racial Justice Council. So there's several meetings that we had. We engaged with the folks that are on the council to develop that racial equity impact statement. So this new requirement for the 2023-2025 budget development process, it includes selecting a program, as Larry said, which is a voting safety program, and developing a community engagement plan. So that community engagement plan was developed earlier this spring. It was manifested into action. The Environmental Equity Committee, that is actually a subgroup or subcommittee under the Racial Justice Council. The purpose of the committee is to center racial equity in our work to ensure that everyone has access and benefits from our natural environment. The agency racial equity impact statement was incorporated into our agency request budget, and it's part of the voting safety advocate policy option package that was presented to the board in July. Going over the proposal, it really has two elements, and that's voting education and outreach. And so the work that we've been doing and proposed within that ARB is modernizing our voting education materials. And that's not only the approach, but also adaptability for the future. By strengthening our ability to deliver voting safety education to underserved communities, it provides that inclusivity. It also resonates with Oregon's diverse voting community. So on the outreach, and really the core of our proposal is expanding our voting safety advocate program into budgeted seasonal positions. Currently, it's a contracted service with 2 individuals. This integrates the delivery model to enhance safety messaging and education by developing relationships with underserved and underrepresented community members in the voting public. This is really a targeted effort to work directly with those community partners, serving families that are recreating on or near the water. And the resource allocation for the proposal, as I said, education outreach, and a lot of that is reducing language barriers in our education materials, which allows us to reach that target audience and connecting with waterway users that are at risk, and a lot of it is unknown dangers to the water. This really provides Oregon an opportunity to be a leader in modernizing voting education and materials. And with the outreach component, it has an emphasis on interacting and building relationships to combine those outreach efforts, not only on water safety, but voting safety messaging. A lot of introductions to voting really comes from that shoreline swimming, that water safety type component. This is in conjunction with reducing barriers, working directly with those underserved community partners and really directly in their community. We've had a lot of informed feedback. We've collaborated and had discussions with environmental professionals of color. We've been working with the Water Safety Task Force of Oregon and in understanding these ambassadors that are already in the community working on this type of messaging and learning from their approach. And the feedback that we've received, it really highlighted that establishing relationships with underserved communities and nonprofits, it has to be adaptable. So when we engage with different communities across the state, it can't just be a very simple model. We have to be adaptable in how we do that. And some of that goes back to, we learned that contracting with our voting safety advocates might have worked for the 2 that we have now, but going into the future, that was really a huge barrier for us. The other component is language barrier. A lot of our materials is traditionally English. We have worked really hard the last few years to have all our signage, our voting safety signage out there on the water to have bilingual, the Spanish translation. In the Portland metro area, we have 5 languages in translation for the operation rules down there. So by improving our materials and reducing that barrier, it gives us an opportunity to connect with boaters that we haven't been able to before. That feedback integration that we received was really prioritizing the core materials. So our boat organ, that education class that a lot of people take, we're working on getting that in Spanish translation currently. And that's not only in print form, but also digital. We plan on doing multiple languages in the future. The policy option package establishes 5 seasonal positions, and this is really to engage and build partnerships across Oregon within communities to deliver that focused, relevant, and effective messaging to recreational boaters of all types and all communities. And as you learned in July, I'm really a numbers person, and a lot of the work I do is numbers-based and data. Really, overall data isn't available or being collected to understand the interactions with underserved communities and waterways and boating safety. But I can tell you that boating incident and fatality reports indicate that boater inexperience and life jackets not being worn is really the largest contributing factor to fatalities. We've learned from community partners that a lot of our water safety educators and kind of the rationale on their approach is really not necessarily a data subjective decision, but often a lot of anecdotal data. And evaluation on the work that we've done so far, the agencies prioritize, like I said, the multilingual education outreach materials. That's reducing the language barrier. We have life jacket focused digital media that we've funded and promoted, the broadcasts on Univision, the KUP and Spanish Network. We also continue to strengthen our ability to deliver education materials to underserved communities and really build out a framework and educational approach in the future. Our boating safety advocate program has been very successful. It's provided a great foundation that we can strengthen through that policy option package and really a long-term plan of being able to develop a budget, training, and implementation and policy for that program. And lastly, I want to share that our education outreach has evolved. So with the help of our boating safety advocates and staff, we've really made a lot of progress this year. These 2 pictures are from Latino Fest, and this was an event in September that our agency became involved in just based on a conversation. I had a lady from Latino Community Association based out of Bend, it's a nonprofit, reach out to me about some life jackets and fitting life jackets to the community. From that conversation, we talked about any kind of event opportunities. We were about 2 weeks away from this event. I was able to coordinate staff and our 2 boating safety advocates to go work this event with a couple thousand people. We're able to fit and then give about 70 members of their community life jackets. And so it was really a great event. We had a bilingual staff member that was able to work the event as well. So overall, a great positive experience for our staff, but also for the community and being able to provide that education outreach.
And Brian, it's fair to say that this event would not be characterized as a boating event or a outdoor so it really got us to a group of people that would normally not show up at boat shows and.
Yeah, correct, Director Warren. The one piece that I've learned is we have to be adaptable. A lot of these events and different areas for our education outreach is going to be rooted. It's really areas that have been underrepresented voters. It's areas that traditionally our agency or other agencies hasn't had a boating type event. So it's really neat to see, and quite honestly, as we've been traveling the state to the community engagement meetings, seeing all these areas of boating in Oregon that we're able to identify as areas that we can continue to work. I'm happy to provide any answers and questions.
Thank you, Brian. I fully support this program. I think it's wonderful. And I really like to see the progress you're making on also being data driven. I'm looking for markers to see how successful we are. So appreciate maybe if we could develop some of those. I don't know what they look like now. And the other aspect of the program is we keep talking about boaters. voters are a very privileged group. And in this program, I would like to reach out to non-voters and bring them into the community. And I know we have a number of efforts where we're trying to do that. That should be included in what you're doing during the data analysis. But I'm really interested in reaching out to them and bring them in, introducing young people to the voting community and make them part of our voting community. So, but again, thank you very much for what you're doing, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I second what Member Withy said. It's really fascinating to see how quickly our organization adapted to the new state law and actually kind of dove into it, not just because we had to, but because we wanted to. And doing things like the Latino Fest was kind of out of the box thinking, which I think is really what we need to keep doing in order to be successful. Comments from Member Early or Member Moran?
Yes.
Go
So
ahead.
I'd like to also say thank you to Brian and to the agency for putting this together. It's been really exciting to see the impact that these voting safety advocates have had in the local communities. And then also just the education that they provide even beyond, as Member Withy pointed out, just voters and getting them excited about being on the water, around the water, and in a safe manner. And I think that is where we start to create additional voters is once they get excited about being on the water. And I've had the opportunity, of course, down here with Luke real close to watch him in action with those programs. So I'm looking forward to the expansion of the Voting Safety Advocate program, and hopefully there will be some really good feedback in the legislature this year on that. So thanks, Brian, for the presentation. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Vice Chair Early. One thing that I did want to mention, and I know is in the board book very small, is that we were awarded and our agency was recognized, and our voting safety advocate, Luke Martinez, for his work as a voting safety advocate in Curry County and Curry County Aquatic Safety. So in September, I was very fortunate to go back to New Hampshire, and actually Luke was there as well. So out of the 5 awards that were really specific to different areas of voting safety, our agency and Luke was recognized for the work that he's been doing and awarded the Voting Safety National Award. So it is a great program. On another front, our agency was also awarded the Compass Award for our work as in waterway access. And so one thing I didn't realize until I went to kind of this national arena of recreational voting safety is our state and our agency is really a leader in recreational voting safety, and not being biased. It is very apparent. People come up and have conversations. They want to know how we've been doing this work, how we either got it through legislation, how we collaborated with voters. So it was really a great eye-opening experience for me, and then also receiving the awards on behalf of the agency.
Congratulations.
Chair Jackson, I just would want to reiterate on this topic. Government has a really good way of turning these things into checkbox exercises, especially if they're part of the budget process. And as a management leadership team, we agreed that we understood we were going to have to fill out some forms and check some boxes, but that we were only going to do this if we did it right. And the authenticity that we are showing up with has been noticed. I would go so far as to say I think it surprised some people that the Marine Board showed up in a real way that quite candidly was recognized by the Racial Justice Council, the EEC. We've done this well. We're being perceived really well on this. And, Brian's team certainly has done a lot, but I also don't want to overlook that the work that Janine has done also put our agency in a position to show up to those meetings and talk about what we've done, not what we're going to do.
I agree. Any other comments for Brian on this issue?
Just congratulations on the awards, Brian, both to the agency and also to Luke.
Thank you.
Brian learned a valuable lesson to have an elevator speech ready to go at any moment. He didn't know he was getting an award. So.
Member Moran, are you? Okay, so next item on the agenda is the grant scoring criteria, and I guess this is also going to be the schedule for next year with Janine.
Chair Jackson, members of the board, for the record, I'm Janine Vallette, the Voting Facilities Program Manager. So working with the Waterway Access Program and non-governmental organizations, we've learned a lot of things. And additionally, the supply chain and availability of contractors and skilled laborers have really been challenging. So in thinking about the two kind of different aspects that impact people's ability to apply for grants, I've slightly modified the schedule from what we've historically done. And the biggest change was really to cycle 3. It was to provide some additional time to allow an applicant to successfully complete a grant. Having the board approve something in January, by the time we got through the agreement process and they could do bidding, it left them very little time to complete something. So we're going to back this up and we're going to bring those cycle 3 applications to the board in October. And that will give additional time for an applicant to complete the bidding process, to do any kind of recruiting, and be able to complete successfully. So we got that. And then I also emailed you some scoring criteria. So we separated out construction-related activities from the education opportunities. The total point value is the same, so we can roll them up and have a universal grant ranking, but we're looking at them in some separate categories that are more applicable to the types of applications. And we also added a component piece for outfitter guide review associated with the waterway access. We've had some applicants who were unaware that an activity would require them to become a registered outfitter guide. And we've also had some applicants who have identified working with outfitter guides. So we want to make sure that that is captured in this process early so that we can work with them. And if an application does not require or meet those, we're going to give an applicant the full benefit and give them those points. So it's not a penalizing one, but it's recognizing the importance of that other program in the agency. So are there any questions on the schedule or the scoring criteria that we've now separated? If not,
Well, go ahead.
So Janine, I had a question about the first-time applicants because they in a couple of the categories, they're only given the average score. Isn't there an opportunity for them to have more? I mean, if their application is incredible, are they still stuck with just the average number, or can they move up in the rankings?
So most of that was giving them the benefit if we had never worked with them. So we have no track record on their ability to comply with the grant or how they perform. And so we gave them an average. I can increase that. Very few parties are excellent and very few are poor. Most filter out in that good to average score. And the same is on their program. If it is a brand new program that has never been there, rather than saying it's great or good, we want to say this is average until it gets established. So when we look at this for a brand new program, we're treating it like a 3-year process. They're going to have the pilot. Let's test it, see what works. The second year, this makes some modifications, and by the third year, it should be fairly established. And so we did that. I'm completely open to increasing it to a good score if that's the direction of the board, to give them the benefit of the doubt that they will be a good applicant and have good performance versus average.
Well, I think there's a difference between being a first-time applicant and being a brand new, you know, person or entity that's actually asking for something. So, I mean, I would think that there should be some ability to move into the good area if that's the case, if it's an established organization.
Okay.
I would tend to agree, because one of the things we keep talking about is wanting to get more geographic diversity in these. And there are organizations in the state that have been established, but just haven't come to us to request. So I'd like to see, for the first-time applicants, give a little bit more of a bonus to encourage a little bit more geographic diversity.
We can easily and give them the benefit of the doubt that they are going to be good applicants and do a great job.
Do we hear any other comments from the board?
Janine, you've had the scoring system for a number of years. How well do you think it's working? You've seen the projects that you've accomplished. Are they the type of projects we want to be doing?
I think for the construction, we've modified some different things. We increased points for accessibility. We've expanded to incorporate all the different permitting technical reports. So I feel very confident with that one. The waterway access, I think separating them is going to solve a lot of those issues and a lot of confusion with applicants. And I think it will allow them to stand on the merits of themselves and be incorporated into all applications being ranked by their score. I think it's going to look very well.
We, of course, just had a presentation from Brian on racial justice. We have a category here called diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that adequate to support the racial justice initiative we have going on?
Yeah, so the application, and I apologize, I had hoped to get the application to you, but with Jennifer's retirement and challenges of hiring a replacement, my skill set in modifying Adobe Forms is not as great as I wish it was. But we're going to have some specific questions that the applicant is going to answer that will identify how they intend to work with underserved communities, organizations, and we're going to ask them some, have you considered this? Have you considered that? So I think by having it as that, it will, using their application responses, it will give us some good information. And we're constantly working. The Latino Fest was a great connection for us. We're now talking to them about a grant to help them with some on-water safety and swimming, which are a challenge for their community. So every time we pick up a phone or answer an email, we are continuing to expand the people we are working with. And I think it's going to continue for many years as we learn.
Other comments or questions?
I just want to thank Janine and her team for doing this work, because I think it makes sense to separate the applicants who are focused more on educational opportunities from those who are focused purely on facilities. So I think that makes sense, and changing the timeline given just how things have changed in the last few years also will probably make it much easier for some folks.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you, because some of these comments some of these changes are based on comments that the board has made in prior grant discussions. So thank you for listening to us. It is a action item, so
I would make a motion to accept the timeline, as well as the staff evaluation and the scoring guide, with that change of first-time applicants flexibility.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. The motion is to accept the timeline and to accept the scoring criteria with the one change to the first time applicant point credit. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
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 Thank you
Great.
very much.
The motion passes. Our next item is also with Janine, facility grant number 1678, Buena Vista Grant Timeline Extension.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Is Matt Hawkins on the phone?
Can you hear me, Janine?
Yes, now I can. Thank you so much, Matt. So Buena Vista, this started out really well. We had a contractor we were familiar with who has worked on other voting facility projects. Unfortunately, the schedule was missed. A revised schedule was submitted and it was missed. Another one was missed. And it soon became apparent that the work was not going to be completed within the remaining in-water construction window. So the county began the process to file against the contractor's bond. And at no fault of the counties, they were diligent in getting modified schedules and contacting the contractor. This is just an unfortunate situation. So to give some assurance to the county that this project is still a priority, I'm requesting that the board approve a time extension to complete the grant by June 30th of 2025. So this, the remaining unspent money will come out of the new budget, the available funds for future grants. But this will allow the county time to work through their legal process, the contractor's bonding company, to successfully be able to complete this project. Matt, do you want to add anything?
I think you've covered it. I think this is a situation that we've never found ourselves in. We have officially terminated the contract after meeting with some legal counsel and have filed against the bond officially. Our goal is to actually get back out. We have to bid this project again, and we hope to do that here within the next few weeks, actually.
Thank you.
So Janine, what happens to the money that we awarded for this biennium, since it will be coming out of the next biennium now?
So the remaining funds that will not be spent this biennium, I want to roll into our small grant program and do a big push. I'm trying to encourage facility owners to upgrade their waypoint finding signage, to have it bilingual, to look at restriping parking areas, and doing some of those items that can be completed within the rest of the biennium.
Okay, and then my second part of the question is, if they are successful in the reclamation of the bond money, will that be applied to their funding mechanism here?
Yes, most likely. There are still legal things happening, and I do not want to cause any impact to the county's process for this. But yes, we anticipate that the recovery of bonds will help fund this. Now, several of the things that we have paid for have been items like the boarding docks. Those will be in county possession. We're not losing anything by those. Same thing with precast planks. There were some deposits paid on materials that are still going through that process.
Member Withy?
so I'm a little confused. If we delay the project, we're giving the time extension into 2025. That means we're committing funds for the next biennium. And there may be a wholly different board come next biennium. So we're committing the next board funding this project.
Yes.
Can't do that. Is that legal?
The board has many times conditionally approved a project for new monies. So unless something very odd happens with a legislative session, the new money would become available July 1st. Now, depending on the contract and the bid, there may be additional things that we can utilize this money for. Maybe it's stockpiling materials, it's other things, but that's something that we'll work with the county and their attorneys on once they receive bids and the new contractors on board.
So the conditional approval is based on the availability of funds, not on additional approvals from the board that's in place at that time.
So what I'm asking is I'm asking the board to have it completed by June 30th of 2025 with the understanding that it's going to be utilizing funds from the new budget. So once it's approved, once we have an approved budget for next biennium, those funds would be available. We are going to try to strategize and expend as much of the funds we have available now to reduce that impact on the next biennium's grant funding. Did that clarify things, Craig?
Yeah, kind of muddy yet, but I understand what we're doing. I just wonder if it makes sense for us to approve funds that are in the biennium. There is no budget in there, there is no board in place, but I understand what we're trying to do and I support what we're trying to do. So on that note, I make a motion that the board approve a time extension to the grant for Will County, recognizing the project won't be completed until June 30th, 2025.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the time extension for grant 1678. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes.
And Matt, I just want to say now that they've approved the motion, thank you for whoever in your organization helped make that ramp usable. There's a small but passionate group that uses that area in the winter. And I think it'll help you and the Marine Board that you were able to get that gravel kind of graded out and usable. So thanks to whoever in your organization helped make that happen.
Well, thank you. We're fortunate to have a public works department that could help us out. And I'd like to thank Janine and all of her work and the board as well for granting us the extension.
It's never fun when you have to terminate a contractor. Our next item is also Janine's. It's grant number 1681 for a cost increase at Sandy Beach.
Clay, are you on the phone? If not, is Kevin on?
Good morning. I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Kevin. Is Clay unable to join us as well?
I'm not sure. Yeah, he's point on this. I'm just attending for my first meeting, but I can go ahead and try to answer any questions you may have about the increase.
All right, thank you very much. So the board had approved a grant to repair the debris boom and the docks out at Sandy Beach, which is Government Island on the Columbia River. The docks were repaired, the debris boom hasn't, prices have escalated. And so State Parks is asking us to help increase our funds. I did have some funds that were cost savings from the Westport project that were boating infrastructure grants, and I want to apply them on here. So I'm recommending a cost increase of $20,000 of our boating facility grant funds and $60,000 in boating infrastructure grant funds, which are the federal funds we receive. And State Parks will be increasing their match by about $7,100 for a new total of $199,667.67. Does the board have any questions, or Kevin, you have anything you want to add?
Just basically this grant was awarded before COVID, and we kind of had to take a break because of COVID and our staffing shortages, and now we're getting back into it. Prices have really increased for construction across the board. So this will kind of cover the extra price increases since the project was started.
All right, thank
I
you.
had a quick question. Oh, sorry, Chair.
Go ahead, Colleen.
Okay. I had a quick question about the repairs that were previously done to the docks. I had heard very recently from some recreational boaters that the docks are again in need of repairs. I realize
Correct.
this grant does not cover that, so I was wondering if we could expect a grant next year to cover the additional repairs?
We do have some funding right now to make some minor repairs, but there is a chance, yeah, we may ask for additional funding. Right now, we're in a reorganization and how we're applying for Oregon Marine Board grants. We're going to start vetting them on a statewide level. So it depends where that falls out on our statewide priority. But yes, if it does rise to the top, there probably will be another application for repairs of those docks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? This is an action item, so anybody you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Go ahead. Is Craig going?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the cost increase of $20,000 in boating facility grant funds and $60,000 in big grant funds to match an increase of $71,0767 from the applicant as identified in the cost increase budget. The modified total cost for the project will be $199,667.67.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that one passes. And our last item,
Good to see you, Kevin. It's been a long time.
Nice to see you, Larry.
See you this
It's been
morning.
a while.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
all right, our last item for Janine is facility grant 1716 Port Abandoned Dock Purchase.
And Jeff, are you on?
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
everybody. I'm here.
Thanks, Jeff. The Port of Abandon had actually applied this biennium, and they withdrew their application in order to basically combine both their boat ramp and their marina project to utilize some cost savings for mobilization, equipment, and to get their last permit. So it will be a very large project. It's about $9 million in total for the two items. In order to help the port out, to have materials on hand, we recommended that they apply to pre-purchase their boarding docks. And you'll notice that they do have less than the 25% match. Some of that is because of their budget cycle and all of the additional grants that they have been applying for that have different start dates and different constraints around it. So staff is recommending this grant in the amount of $671,850 of boating facility grant funds to match $90,000 of applicant match. Are there questions?
This is a very heavily used facility, and it definitely needs this improvement. I appreciate the fact that you have decided to do some cost savings on this project by combining it with others. So thank you.
Any other comments from the board? I agree with member Early about withdrawing your previous application and coming back to combine two projects, because again, often in rural areas, mobilization costs and some of those other costs can really experience good reductions if you can combine projects. So again, I appreciate that you're doing that. This is an action item, so do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that the board approve facility grant 1716 in the amount of $671,850 for facility grants to match 90,000. The applicant match as identified in the budget. The total project cost is $761,850.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, board.
Thank you, Janine. We've been at this for a little bit over an hour. Does anybody want to take a brief break before we continue? I'm seeing yes, so.
Yes, please.
Let's take about a 10-minute break and we'll be back here at about 9:45.
Those are, believe it or not, they're a real better state job. We added those into the mix. In my opinion. Am I making that slide be there?
It is not. Okay, so the October 26th Oregon State Marine Board meeting is back in session. Our next agenda item is Lower Willamette Rural Implementation and Outreach and Engagement Efforts with Justin Lauer. For those on the board who haven't yet met Justin, he is our Portland Area Waterway Coordinator who's been with the agency since the end of June.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, good morning, Chair Jackson, members of the board. Thank you for having me here to speak to you today. Like Chair Jackson just said, we're going to be covering some of my impressions on the Lower Willamette River rules and their ongoing implementation. Starting with that, telling a little bit of how I gathered this information. My method was a lot of unstructured interviews with both people in the community as well as people at stores, clubs, frequent contact points for voters, anybody that might have good perspective on that. And I would normally go with an unstructured interview and ask a lot of open-ended questions, because that allowed me to seek out perspectives from these people that they might not otherwise volunteer if I was looking for specific things. And that has been pretty successful in leading me around to new things that I can research and making me aware of the needs and different troubles people in different voting communities have. Moving on from there, pass-through zones. There we go. There we go, back on. So roughly 25% of the voters that I interviewed in the field were not aware of the pass-through zone at all. I had seen literature that hadn't been told. Whether they were being completely honest or not, I couldn't tell in most cases, but there was a general feeling that it has not been well adopted or understood by the public yet. Still kind of early in the process. Many of the voters that were able to say that they knew about the rules were not fully able to articulate them back to me, which makes me question whether or not they were able to follow them or be aware of them while they're operating. Power voters and personal watercraft were slightly more likely to understand the rules, both have an understanding and awareness of them. And contact points such as boat sellers clubs also had a better understanding of the average voter that you could have. Commonly, a partial understanding that people would have is that you just simply aren't supposed to hang out there. That's about as much as they could explain about it. That you're supposed to go through the area, not hang out there. One of the specific rules. Towing violations are still pretty frequent. I've seen those about every time I go down there, and that's reported by anybody I've talked to in that area as well. It still experiences a good deal of congestion. If the intention was for it to operate like a highway, reports from people in different user groups said that's not really happening. And the reason for it may be related to non-motorized craft and the fact that they are not really following proper steering and navigation rules, not keeping a lookout, hanging out in the middle of the channel. They're not really aware of where they need to be, and they are slowing the boats down. Also in that area, there are sailboat races, all kinds of people moving around, tubing, and often it makes sense for people who are going through there in a power boat to slow down for safety purposes. The second pass-through zone, most people don't know about. That's the one in front of Lake Oswego. I found that in most of our materials is not mentioned. It's kind of hard to find. I had to look into our rules to really understand that part. But there's a lot of people that have not been made aware of that. So it was kind of hard to do a lot of research on opinions. Okay. Yeah, complaints I hear in this area don't really have much to do with the pass-through zone. People are generally pretty happy about that, and most complaints have to do with ADVs in the Ross Island area and parking for non-motorized. Also, some of the weight complaints you get there are usually from the boat ramp, people with power boats who are trying to launch. But those weights were created by people who are legally transiting through the air. Moving on to wake zones. Next, the whole gate channel. The technical wake zones are violated. Wake zones are frequently violated, pretty much daily. And there's a lot of different types of craft, power boats and jet skis that do that. They're frequently disruptive to paddlers in this area and rowers, and also to the gentlemen who reside on the Whole Gate Channel, who were able to tell me that does happen every day when I spoke with them. Persons in an interview that violated the wake rules I was able to flag down in that channel and came to talk to me often said they weren't aware of the rule there. I don't know if they were 100% telling the truth, but many of them were. And then usually, or at least 3/4 of the time after I gave them the information about that entire channel being in the wake zone, they would forward a little bit, get past all the paddlers and then speed up. Seemed like they were thinking about it as a, you don't need to send wake towards people that are there, but if they're not present, it's okay. That might need some clarification. The 100-foot proximity rule for the dock. There are a lot of violations in there. Not a lot of reports about it. You don't hear people complaining about that on the water or at the boat ramps. I also had 2 opportunities to speak with dock owners. It's hard to go to private homes and go talk to them in the time that I had. So there's possibly an info gap on public opinion there. Often when the river is wide enough, people follow this rule. They follow a lot of the proximity rules there, where there's plenty of space for boats to maneuver around and make good decisions. Boaters usually recognize the patterns where if there's other traffic coming in the river, you generally have to move away from that. You have 2 boats coming at each other, even if they have, whether or not they do have a tow, they are inclined to move closer to the docks in a narrow area than they are towards the people or boats that are coming in. And most people I've talked to about that, when they see that, they feel it's a reasonable width. But when they can, I've seen people follow. Wake, there we go. Wake surfing rule, been very effective. Haven't seen a single wakeboard on there. I haven't seen a wake surfing boat on there or heard anything about wake surfing. I've asked people that I've talked to, nobody has reported seeing a wake surfing boat on that area. It may have happened, but I've seen no evidence. That's been going very well. Most of them have probably relocated to the river below Portland and various lakes. Be useful to study where they've gone to see how that's maybe going to affect other areas. Sentiment towards that rule is kind of mixed when you ask people about it. Sometimes people were not happy with wake boats. Some people thought that wake surfing shouldn't have been done there out of courtesy, but weren't necessarily as comfortable with it being ruled out. Little shout out for Active Water Sports, which is one of the bigger places that sells wake boats and boarding materials. They have been on the ball with distributing excellent information about the rules to their customers. They created their own materials. They created a website. They have a QR code they place on boats that will take people directly there instead of having to go to the paper. And it's clearly written and made specifically for their group. So that may have had an effect on their compliance as well. The planing 5 mile-an-hour speed rule is what I'm calling it. It's also in the wake surfing rule. Going to where you have to travel at 5 miles per hour, no wake or planing speed, and not in between. That's also a very difficult rule to follow and probably to enforce, because along with the same things, sometimes it's difficult to make a choice between going fast and slowing down a little bit. At your whole speed, when you're not off plane, you can slow down a lot faster, you can take off the power and your boat will just stop. When you're planing, it's going to take a little bit longer. So speed also maybe matters in that case, and that's something we consider in the future. Next. So wake sports, I call the proximity rules with the 100-foot rule for water skiers and the 200-foot rule for tubers and wakeboarders. This one, along with the other ones, is kind of difficult for people to follow in the narrow areas because they, just like everything else, those other rules are concerned with boat traffic coming the other way. Also, there are non-motorized paddlers. It's always different when you're going there, so they're trying to adapt to it. I think sometimes they choose that as the lesser of evils. Additional education and outreach is a good thing that we do to continue trying to help this. Also, we have a perceived lack of presence on that area. Sometimes you'll see somebody, a police officer going by, but they have a lot of river to patrol. And whether or not enforcement is going on, I believe it's pretty well, but you may not see it and you may not see enough of it. And if people don't perceive a presence on the river, it is difficult for them to believe that the rules are going to affect them. The more they see a presence of people looking at that, the more they have people talking to them, I think the more they will follow. That's something we can do in the future. And now we're on to the position.
Thank you, Justin. Is anyone on the board have questions for Justin about his observations and interviews with folks from this year?
So you indicated that the information came from interviews, which I think is good. Did you do personal observations? Could you verify the information that you were getting interviews with personal observations?
I did do that. I did naturalistic observations afterwards. So in between visiting people, trying to go find people in the community, I would also observe behavior in the area, what was going on, or hazards, anything like that. Also, I would go back conversations with people and use some of the things they'd said. So whether or not I was able to witness that, whether I could talk to people there in that area who have also seen. So I use that to direct where my interviews were and to try to get more information.
So when you talk to people and you inform them of the rules, were they then more compliant, or could you evaluate that?
And for the most part, they didn't argue with me. They were like, I didn't know that. Yes, I'm sorry. I'll follow that next time. Usually apologetic. But I would usually start on my conversation with, are they aware of the rules? Are they aware of the Marine Board and what we do? Those kinds of things. And moving on from there, open-ended questions, they come up with things that I may not have thought of. That could further direct how I would seek information.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I apologize, Justin, if I missed this at the very beginning. What was your method of collecting this information? Were you in a boat? Were you on the shore? Was it both? What percentage of time? What types of boats?
Yeah, a lot of the time, most of the summer, I was on foot or walking around on beaches, docks, going to different boating businesses, trying to hang out at boat ramps. Well, that way, because I did not have access to a boat. I gained access to a boat in the middle of September, and I have been focusing on being on the water as much as possible. And a lot of those observations came with that. I found that being able to be on the water as opposed to driving around is a much more effective way to engage.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Member Moran, questions, comments?
I just wanted to say thank you for gathering this information. It's always incredibly helpful to hear after the fact how things are going and to just hear from boaters in general.
So having been out on the water a lot this year, and probably more this year than I was last year, I think compliance on the part of the motorized community is better this year than it was last year, but it's still a really low bar to pass.
But you've noticed improvement.
So I think so. We're seeing more people go down, maybe not past the Hawthorne, but at least to the Hawthorne. And again, my observation is that a lot of the issues and concerns that are affecting the motorized community are coming from primarily stand-up boarders who don't really understand navigation rules. So the whole education and outreach to that community. And my hunch is some of it is the sort of racing and what I would hope to be the more educated community, but it's also the folks that are getting their equipment from big box stores and really kind of that don't know what we don't know.
One of the things I'm doing right now is trying to make good relationships with paddleboarder groups, people that actually have good understandings of what you're supposed to do, how to safely recreate on the river. And they have the same opinions about the paddleboarders that are floating in the middle of the river, not looking at anything. And so I think they are willing to help out, and we could work with them to develop materials perhaps that more clearly or simply explain navigation rules as it would pertain to a paddleboard.
Okay.
So you continue to gather information. My question is, what do we do with that information? are we gonna wind up proposing making changes to the rules? Or maybe more education? Or are there other things we can implement to improve?
Well, that'll be a question for you guys in the future, I think, about the rules and whether you don't want to keep them. For now, I think there's a lot of things that could be done to improve compliance. I think we're still early on. There's a lot of education that needs to take. And I think once we see the effect that can have, we can move forward on whatever else.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, you just answered my question. I was going to ask you if you had any general observations on, of what could be done in the future. So education and outreach sounds like that's a good plan for the further evaluation of the rule.
And I think some of the information that he's, between Justin and Ethan, what they've created these past 2 summers, I think also can help inform our boating safety group in terms of materials to be produced, how and where to distribute those. And I think some of the work that Justin did this year, going out to some of the retailers, and especially going out to folks like Active Water Sports and seeing what they've done, that's really commendable.
Yes, I would like to say thank you to Active Water Sports too, because they have definitely helped to further the mission of the rule.
Very impressed.
Any other comments or questions? All right, the next part of this discussion is actually to look at where we want to see this position go and some of the responsibilities for that position. So we're going to have a little personnel switch here. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
So do you want to?
Sure, I'll start the conversation. Chair Jackson, Member Withy, virtual members of the board. For the record, my name is Josh Mahal, Environmental Policy Program Manager. Before we get into a discussion about the future of that position, I do want to point out that we use this opportunity to talk about the lower Willamette rules because we were committed to the board to come to visit this the first couple of years after implementation to review the effectiveness, to examine potential future needs. And so that was part of what Justin was doing this year, but we were really focusing too on starting to better engage the boating community and some of the non-boating community, frankly, in the Portland area. So we did a whole lot of work trying to assess the needs. Justin did a lot of work trying to assess the needs of boaters and other water users in that Portland area. Where are those gaps that we could fill in? So to those education and outreach efforts that were just discussed, it was going to those boating groups, going to those retailers saying, hey, what do we need to do to increase education, to increase compliance? Sure, there could be some regulatory changes that the board could look at as they potentially tweak some of the lower Willamette rules. But I think it's apparent so far that overall they're working fairly well, even though compliance was still not maybe where we'd like it to be. But there are opportunities to address that compliance through education efforts. When you keep hearing people say, maybe we just don't know about the rules, I think it shows that there's more work to be done in the implementation of current ones before potentially revisiting anything else. So that is part of the position, as well as doing some of those observations and interviews with the public to gauge the effectiveness of the rules. So that's where the current position is, but we want to have a conversation with the board about what else they'd like to see from that position as we potentially kind of expand those efforts.
Thank you. Anybody want to start the discussion?
Well, I think we're off to a good start. I think continuing more of the same is important. Learning what's going on the river, understanding the issues and the problems. I think we've started to gather information. I don't think we have enough yet. We speculated that a large part of the problem is people who don't have their own craft and are renting them from the big box stores, and they're not getting the information on the rules. So I would like to pursue that further and find out if that indeed is true. But I'd also like to address how we do a better job of enforcing existing rules. we talk about violators. I don't know if education is going to be enough or these are willful violators. So I would like to figure out if there's a better way to enforce rules. I know the sheriff is not going to be there all the time. I don't know if safety advocates can really help that or not. So I'd like to investigate that further, see if there's other things we can do to enforce the rules we have.
One of the things I'd like to say, and we've talked about it a little bit, you mentioned about people don't know about the Holgate Channel rules. And part of that is the signage in that area. Some of the signage was put up and it's been torn down. And there's other places where there probably should be better signage. And working with different user groups there to make it, like the sign that's there now is only visible if you're approaching from one particular angle. So to kind of figure out, working with the boating safety folks and figure out, how do we get the information out on the Holgate Channel to show that this is, the whole thing is a no wake zone and that we really mean it as a full-time no wake zone, not if there's nobody here, then you can go do your thing. I really liked hearing how you talked about approaching people, and I definitely want to see more of that happening. And I think the on foot, going to some of the big box stores, going to some of the local kind of mass market retailers, as opposed to, for example, Next Adventure or Alder Creek, I think is a really good tactic to figure out how to partnership with them and get our message out. So see more of that. And also I am really excited that you did reach out to Active Water Sports. And I think there's some other organizations and businesses in that industry. That maybe it's working with the folks from AWS to help kind of embrace other organizations in that group or in that industry to kind of follow suit with them. I think that would be fantastic.
One of the things that I would like to see with this position is the opportunity to utilize both on water and off water interviews. I think that that's really important, and I think Justin even pointed that out, that it made a big difference. I think it's really important that we have somebody actually on the water. You can make contact a little bit easier with people, and you can also have, I guess, a little bit more complete observations. And then the other point that he brought up that I think is relevant is, there's not as many wake sport or wake surfers there. There aren't any. Where did they go? And are those in the area that could also be observed and maybe make some observations on?
Well, Chair Jackson, members of the board, you've given us a lot of good input there. Member Withy, I think that you're looking at boat liveries and expanding our efforts there. I think that that's spot on. I think that's something that we have talked about internally as a need anyway, and I think that we will certainly focus this position to start even reaching out to those liveries further, especially in the Portland area. A lot of people on the water are people that rent boats, and which is fantastic. That's often the first time that folks get on the water, making sure that we are in a good partnership with them and we are aligned and they understand their expectations and provide those to their customers. I think that's a great focus for the position. Hearing what you're saying regarding the Holgate Channel, the continued work with businesses, both in the wake sports industry, the motorboat industry, the non-motorized industry, and again, building those connections just to make sure, first and foremost, they know who the Marine Board is, what the regulations are, so they can contact us, and then we can work together to mitigate future concerns. Yes, thank you for the support for the on-water interviews and other observations there. Remember earlier, we're seeing the same thing, that there's only so much you can do from the shore at the dock. When you kind of meet people when they're recreating, you get a better perspective. So we will incorporate all those into the position this winter, spring, and beyond.
I would say, Chair Jackson, that I'll have Brian reach out to you after the meeting and just make sure if you have thoughts on signage in the area. I know he's got some data on sign use, and just talk about if there's areas you'd like him to specifically take a look at, or someone from his team. And then And also remind folks that right now, this position is a permanent part-time. In our budget that the board approved, we've requested for it to become a permanent full-time. And so every time I'm out in the Portland area, I hear about how great the position is, how everybody's thankful that we've got it. And my response to them from here until the day our budget gets approved is, then we're gonna need you to show up at our budget hearings and tell folks why this is important and that it's adding value. So, you know, just a reminder to people that that is part of our budget process that we're going through. And, you know, it's always nice when we have support for these positions from the people that it's helping, so that it doesn't look like it's just government showing up in a place that they're not actually wanted. And then you triggered my thought there is I just could picture Justin sitting outside of a big box store someday. Did you just buy a kayak? And is that a paddleboard in your, is that a paddleboard in your cart? Let me help you.
Well, wasn't there an ad or a public safety thing where a person's calling their spouse from the Costco parking lot?
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, oh, honey, did you get this, and this? Oh, yes, and I also got a paddleboard. But did you get a PFD?
Yeah.
So the other thing that kind of crossed my mind about this, in being on the water in a canoe or kayak and approaching people in that really kind of friendly, hey, did you know about? Was wondering about the appropriateness of maybe as part of education for Justin for this position, seeing if there's anything in the ACA or BCU slate of trainings, just to give him a little bit more credentials when he goes out and talks to people on the water, especially if you're talking to the people that are the people that should know what they're doing, the more like the racing paddlers, the rowing clubs, some of that, to just give you a little bit more credentials in that area.
Chair Jackson, I agree. That's something we can certainly look into, and then I do agree with that. Having those credentials may, say more, but increase that kind of credibility with our people on the water. So absolutely, that's a great advice.
And we've found that, you know, recently, probably in the last 2-3 years, we've started to have some of our Marine Patrol get their captain's licenses, and it increases their confidence, it increases their credibility, and increases what they can talk about. So not suggesting that this position maybe is a cap, but to the credentials you're talking about, I think we've got proof that it does help.
The other thing about the credentials too is that it actually helps with, I guess, empathy towards somebody else who has those credentials, and just rapport.
Agreed. Any other comments?
Chair Jackson, I have one. I just remember with you brought up enforcement, and I wanted to point out that I was not ignoring that. That's just a more challenging one, as we're not an enforcement agency, and the affected counties, especially Multnomah County here, is very strapped, as you and the rest of the board know. But I can say it's something that we will continue to work with primarily the sheriff's office on our priorities, but it's something that's difficult to achieve unilaterally.
And I think that piece, Josh, is important, is the more we have someone like Justin out there helping us understand where the problem and pain points are, the more then we can work with the boating safety program to try to focus the Multnomah County resources where they might be best utilized.
So I recognize there's not enough resources to enforce the rules we have. I'm just wondering if there's other ways that we can approach it and wind up with the same result. You know, some places have gone to cameras to monitor and actually enforce traffic rules. I don't know if we want to go that direction or not. I think that's it, fraught with a lot of issues. Yeah. But are there other ways? I don't know if we could deputize maybe some fire departments or other ones that could help us observe things. Just searching for other ways to help with enforcement of the rules.
Remember, with there a lot of those options would take some significant legislative action to deputize folks or to give the Marine Board some sort of enforcement agency. And in the past, the legislature has not been receptive to that idea. However, I think efforts with our boating safety advocates we talked about earlier, some of Justin's efforts, before we potentially look at any more of an enforcement route, I think I think we should really exhaust all our other non-enforcement efforts. If we can get compliance with, more of that kind of, that outreach education on the water approach, I think we need to make sure we do that before we potentially go with a legislative ask saying, hey, we need more enforcement dollars or power or anything of that nature.
Fully concur.
Great. Any other comments or questions on this topic? Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Director Warren. Moving on, our next item is the noise rulemaking on the lower Willamette related to PWC. Josh.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. So as the board is well aware, concerns regarding PWC operations around Meldrum Bar began to emerge in 2021. After deliberations and public input, the board adopted a temporary rule to lower the allowable sound limit of PWC engines to 75 decibels in the affected area of the Willamette River in Klamath County as measured from the shore. So at the last meeting, the board ultimately denied a petition to expand the temporary rule that was put in place in April to include additional restrictions. However, the board directed staff to take the necessary steps, including permanent filing of the rules, to make that temporary rule permanent. We noticed its permanent rule in August. We held a hearing in mid-September. Comments were received both in writing and at the public hearing that were similar to those that we've heard over the past year, which is general frustrations from some folks about Meldrum Bar activities. So that's where we are now. The then temporary, now permanent rule for 75 decibel limit has been in place for roughly 7 months. As I mentioned in the board book, the Klamath County Sheriff's Office has been pretty active on the issue, despite the calls from some folks. However, since the writing of the board book, they provided some additional information regarding their activities that I want to bring to the forefront now. So this is all directly from the Klamath County Sheriff's Office. In 2022, the Sheriff's Office received 36 unique calls about loud PWCs at Meldrum Bar on 23 different days. 2 callers accounted for 33 of those calls. Law enforcement was able to respond to 16 of the calls. They indicated that they never recorded measurements operating over the limit, so no citations were issued. In response to calls, a significant amount of time was spent taking readings from different areas in the Meldrum Bar vicinity. The Sheriff's Office specifically said that they spent several hours on shore measuring multiple PWCs. Something else that was notable is that they indicated that they had spoken to several operators that were aware of the new rules and that they had actually purchased sound meters to make sure that they were indeed in compliance. The Sheriff's Office would like to convey is that they have directly reached out to both the West Lynn and Gladstone fire departments and asked for assistance when the Marine Patrol is otherwise engaged and unavailable to respond. Both departments were given sound meters and advised on the testing procedures. Both departments have reported taking sound meter readings, but neither have reported any readings above the now current 75 decibel limit. So at this point, I'd say the Marine Board has empowered municipalities in the affected areas to respond to complaints. With the rules in place and county and city officials equipped to enforce the rules, we believe that's the case. Adding more tools to law enforcement's metaphorical toolbox in the form of other rules designed to mitigate the complaints of some may not yield any kind of different or additional response. The ongoing requests for more actions are starting to take the form of calls for more law enforcement presence, which really becomes a different conversation entirely. One possibility for the Marine Board could be to direct the concerned citizens to their municipalities and ask for additional on-water and on-land presence in the affected areas to police activities at or near the park, if that's a priority for the community. I'm going to close my part of this by saying that rulemaking on this topic, as you know, is closed. However, just like anything else, the board can open the rulemaking process at any time or provide staff with any other direction. So that's it for me, Chair Jackson.
Thank you. I would like to comment and thank the folks who did participate in the public comment and hearing process during the transition from the temporary to permanent rulemaking. Are there any comments from our board members or questions for Josh? Member Withy?
Well, you know, we got a new letter from the community leaders in mid-September requesting assistance, pleading for help. They indicate the problem is not improved since we initiated the new rule. In fact, they feel it's worse. There is a group of operators, BWC operators, that seem to be emboldened to go out and do the acrobats that they're doing, intrude upon people's livelihoods or activities. The comments that I reviewed are overwhelming. There are additional rules that are required to stop this behavior. And in the community, officials are in a much better position than I or other members of this board, I believe, to evaluate the problem. No one is asking me for any PWCs or any other voting activities to be banned. All they're asking for is this behavior to be stopped. The behavior is associated with acrobats being performed by the two-stroke PWCs. And it's not all of them, it's a group of them. And I think we as a board should listen to the community and do what we can to affect changes in that behavior. Obviously, we've all grown up and we know that we can avoid enforcement if we just do it when the enforcement's not present. And I think that's what's going on here. And if you watch the videos that we've been provided, you'll see the antics that are underway. So I think that we need to take further action for that reason. I propose that we initiate rulemaking to engage the public as recommended by the community leaders and modify OAR 250-021-0040 special local restrictions on PWCs, just like we have in other places of the state. And that change to that OAR would read, a voter shall not operate, modify, and/or alter a personal watercraft such that the engine muffling equipment becomes ineffective in abating, reducing, or mitigating the noise levels produced by its engine while in the water. A violation would include operating a personal watercraft with aerial maneuvers in a manner such that the engine noise muffler and propulsion system are out of the water, allowing engine noise to be unabated and directed outward above instead of below the surface of the water. Restricted aerial maneuvers include, but are not limited to jumps, flips, spins, corkscrews, or any maneuver that reduces the engine muffling capability of the watercraft. The restriction also includes revving the engine on land or structure on the water while the muffler and propulsion system are not submerged, or any activity that would produce a harsh or intermittent disturbance that would likely harass bystanders, residents, wildlife, and other watercraft operators in the area. I believe this amendment would be consistent with other rules that we put in place in other communities. So it's my motion that we pursue that here. We engage public in discussions on this amendment through rulemaking.
Right, so Member Withy has made a motion. Do I hear a second? Hearing none, are there other comments from board members? Member Early?
Yes, you know, our law enforcement, our Marine officers are stretched pretty thin. But that doesn't preclude other law enforcement agencies within that area to take up the cause of helping to regulate this. It also does not preclude those elected officials that we heard from making this more of a priority to not only the sheriff's office, but also the local law enforcement agencies. And personally, I think that's kind of the step we're at right now. I think that we need to encourage those local citizens to contact their elected officials to be able to make that a priority versus additional rules that won't be enforced either or don't have the capacity to be enforced. We have something there. And while I sympathize with the conditions that the people in this area are encountering, I think that we're only hearing from a few people that are are really making this a big, it is a big issue, but I mean, they're making it a bigger issue at this point. And I just think that they need to contact their local officials, and if that's where they want the priority to be, then those are the people who can make that happen for them now. I feel like we have given them some tools.
Member Moran?
Thank you. I agree with what Member Early is saying. From what Josh has shared with us and what is in our board book, it sounds like the tools we have provided are making an impact, and that local law enforcement agencies are doing their best to collaborate with their peers to make sure that there's no one agency responsible for enforcing these rules. It sounds like it's probably still early days in all of this, and I'm sure there are still some issues, but it sounds like progress is being made. So I agree with Member Early that I think at this point we've done what we can.
Point out the people that are concerned have reached out to their community leaders. That's why we have letters from the community leaders asking for help. Let me also point out the police chiefs have signed these letters requesting for the additional rule. So local law enforcement is involved, but they say their hands are tied because they don't have rules that they can administer and enforce. So the community's been at this for a year, requesting this. It's the leaders of the community and it's the law enforcement that are making this request.
Go ahead, Member.
Josh, can you clarify that? Because it was my understanding that this rule could be enforced by any local law enforcement.
Member Early, that is correct.
So a terrestrial police officer from one of the cities could be at a complainant's home with a noise meter, get something in the realm of 75, and then issue a citation on somebody on the water.
Chair Jackson, I don't believe their hands are tied in any way in enforcing state laws, regardless of whether they're a peace officer with the county or a municipality. So yes.
So I'm tending to lean with Member Moran and Vice Chair Early that people who are affected by this issue reaching out to their local electeds, we cannot direct a sheriff's agency or a police agency to focus on enforcing a particular law or set of laws. The only people who can do that is the elected officials in those jurisdictions. And we do have a law in our books about muffler modification and inappropriate operation of a marine engine and its muffler. We have this noise rule, and I found it encouraging actually that Josh reported that some of the performers have actually bought noise meters and are trying to self-monitor themselves. So I'm tending to lean that again, let's see what progress we've made and let's try to keep making progress on that same path.
The other thing that I would like to see is perhaps, hopefully we will get these additional boating safety advocate positions approved this year. But, I think that would be a great opportunity to be able to have a boating safety advocate in that area, just to help to observe and to educate and, really get some feedback. It's, with the community and all the letters and everything that we have received, to have Clackamas Sheriff's Office receive 33 out of 36 complaints from just 2 different callers, it seems like it seems disproportionate.
So does the board believe that the aerial maneuvers being performed by the PWCs are acceptable?
I'd like to make I guess it would be a hearsay comment. Someone I know has a 10-year-old child, and her sister has a 10-year-old child. They went up on paddle boards on a Sunday morning when the PWC performers were doing their activity. One of the PWC performers went over to the children who were on paddle boards and asked if they were scared by his wave, scared by what they were doing. The noise was bothering them, and the kids were like, no, this is really cool. He went over to the moms who were a respectful distance away from their children in kayaks and asked those same questions. And everybody in the vicinity on the water thought that what the folks on the PWCs were doing was fun to watch. It was exciting. It was really cool, and they were enjoying it. So I would, being on the water and being around the water and using our parks like Meldrum Bar, it's about the boating and it's about that, but it's also about people having an enjoyable experience in the park and on the water. And I'm not convinced that banning these activities is a positive thing.
Would it make sense for the board to sit down with the community leaders who have signed these initiatives and discuss this issue with them?
I mean,
I don't feel like that's within our purview. I think that is staff. That's what the staff is there for. Director Warren?
And I would offer on that front, we've had multiple public input processes, and the leaders have provided comment over the time. They've talked with, some of them have talked with staff directly. And so I think the direction that I'm hearing, it sounds like 3 of the board members talking about, we've given them a tool. So you asked a question about, is there a problem with the aerials? You asked that of the board, so I won't answer it on behalf of the board, but I would say the rule, if the aerial is causing them to go over 75 decibels, there's a rule violation. And adding another rule to a rule, I don't think changes the outcome. So what I'm hearing is folks, member Moran, member early Chair Jackson saying is, we've given them the tool. Now what we need to do is encourage people to prioritize. So I would say that if I was in some of those local officials' seats, it would be easier to sign a letter to make it somebody else's problem than to try to deal with it myself. And I think it's time now. We've given the tool. We've got some data, and we certainly have heard from some of the different law enforcements and to help and encourage them to enforce the rule.
In closing, I would like to make a comment that these communities are upset. I don't believe this issue is going to go away. I think they're going to continue being upset. So if we just simply say, well, you're on your own, you got a rule, figure it out, I think we're not doing ourselves any justice or the voting community. So that's my final statement.
Sure, and I would offer, member with you, I think a point member Jackson was trying to make, which is we heard from a lot of people over that rulemaking, and not everybody was in support of these changes. There's a lot of river users, there's a lot of people out there, and you'll never craft a perfect rule that makes every user group happy. And so I think the solution was actually elegant in that it provides a tool for law enforcement to use that addressed the behavior that the board acknowledged was a problem. And would also remind, it's a new rule. It takes time for new rules to have impacts. So the fact that we're already hearing about impacts and people changing behavior and modifying their behavior, I think that's a real win in the rule. We're hearing fire departments being involved, the work that the law enforcement is doing. So I think the direction back to that local community around, if this is a priority for you in your policing, make it a priority in your policing, whether that's city, whether that's county. And I think, remember with you, part of what you're seeing is the community may be responding that is not a priority for their policing. And I can't tell you why that is. I'm not a part of their discussions, but I think sometimes we can tell through their actions where they're prioritizing their work. So providing just one more rule, I don't know that I think then we just come back 6 months later with the same discussion, unless they change the priority and how they're going to enforce.
Member Moran, I'm sorry. Gesundheit, did you have your hand up? I wasn't sure.
Thank you. No, I was just sneezing.
Well, before that, when Director Warren was talking, I wasn't sure if you actually had your hand up or you were stretching or something.
No, baby. Baby next to me, so just comforting the baby.
Any other comments from the board? I would tend to second what Director Warren is saying, that we cannot direct police agencies to change their priorities. The only people who can do that are the boards that oversee those agencies, whether it's a police, I guess like the commission that oversees those groups in those cities, or the city councils or the county councils. So, I mean, I think, again, they need to set this as a priority for their policing organizations, because just throwing more tools in the toolbox. I got a giant toolbox at home and I don't use any of them because I'm not a tool user. I just like tools. You know, that's like, we can't force them to enforce the laws. Only their elected officials can. Anybody else?
Member Jackson, if I may, if I understand the direction of the board, I will reach back out to, some of those interested officials that have sent us letters and kind of relay some of this information, but also offer to go to commission meetings or city council meetings and kind of provide our perspective too. So that because oftentimes they are very unaware of marine law enforcement and how that works. That's not something they typically deal with. So, I mean, I will certainly try to be a resource for them as they assess those priorities that Director Warren just brought up.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank
Are
you.
we, any other comments? All right, so our next item on the agenda is board meeting timelines.
And members of the board, this is just a reminder that we put this check and balance in a way to make sure that we're having the discussions that you want to have. And the list has gotten a little light, so we'll just assume we're doing a great job. But this would be a great time if there's items that you would like us to spend a little more time on, if there's work sessions you want, we would love to hear them so that we're bringing material that you want to learn more about, not just things we want to talk about.
Thank you, Director Warren. I'm going to start this discussion. So at our January meeting, I would like to see an update on the waterway access permit program. We're going to be entering our 4th year of that program on January 1. And having spoken with some folks, I think there might be some changes that would make the program better. So having kind of an informational update at the January meeting, and then maybe at our summer meeting, talking about some potential changes to the program.
Chair Jackson, that would be great, because as hard as it is to believe, by this time next year, we'll be talking about 25 legislative concepts.
Exactly.
And if we don't start in January, we certainly won't be ready to have the board give us a direction as we start late fall next year, preparing 25 concepts. So timing would be perfect. It's been on our mind as well, so be happy to do that. And if any board members have anything specific they would like out of that presentation, certainly let myself, Josh know. And otherwise, we'll reach out to a few of you that we know are really involved in this issue.
Are there any other comments or requests from the board?
Sure. Yeah, I think that it would be helpful for the board to hear more about the outfitter guide program. Maybe in, I know we hear occasionally what's going on with those, but there's been a lot of changes within the outfitter and guide community within the last couple of years, a lot of issues that have come up. And I just think either part of a bigger work session or even just an agenda item that would be informational might be helpful. I mean, I'm very familiar with it, but I might have an advantage there.
Member Early, only if I can complain about ones that cut off my trolling lane. But we have a meeting scheduled in June and November. And I think we had thought about then doing some clean marina, and there's a lot of charters in that area. So we were going to already hook in some charters. But what I hear you saying is, let's go ahead and take that time to maybe in June. Would that work? To if we're in Newport, we've got the charter fleets there, but then add in the outfitter guide. Is that timing okay for you?
Might not matter for me, but I think that would be very helpful. And I think that, combining the outfitter guide with the charters and even differentiating between those two, because, there are people who don't know what the difference is.
That is true.
Thank you. That's an area I'm definitely needing to know more information about. So thank you. Other requests, interests? Member Withy? The January meeting is in Salem on the 25th. Anyone else?
No, just a reminder, Jennifer had sent out those meeting notices for like the next 2 years, so the dates go right on the calendars.
And the next two will be in Salem because we're in legislative session and it's always just, it never fails. If we were to schedule it away, we would end up having a hearing that Josh and I'd have to be gone to that day. So that we will be in session by the time that meeting happens. And I can only imagine the pace that we're going to be running that first week. So
you can predict what you're gonna be doing then.
running.
New legislature?
Running. It's good. It's always a fun, exciting buzz when a session starts.
Anything else? Okay, so our next board meeting, as I just said, was the 25th of January in Salem. With that, we've completed our
Wait.
agenda.
I just got one more comment. I'd like to congratulate Chair Jackson on running an excellent meeting and for being there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was going to say, we've completed our agenda. Are there any other comments or things that people would like to bring up as business? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. And it is, what, 10:14? 10:45.
Thanks, everyone.
Safe travels, everyone.
Thank you.
We may
Thank
be
you.
live in a minute.